Hello and good evening, everyone from India. Myself, I am Muralidhar, working in Larsen and Toubro with Dr. Sen, and I will be MC of this event. And I welcome you all to this virtual symposium on recent trends in occupational health and safety in construction industry, presented by ICOH Scientific Committee in Construction Industry. Without further delay, I request Dr. Krishna Nirmalya Sen, Chair, ICO Scientific Committee in Construction Industry and President ASSP India Chapter to formally start the proceedings.
I think you are on mute. Unmute.
Right. Yeah, I got it. I got an alert. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my dear colleagues from OHS fraternity, from various parts of the world, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all of you. My name is Krishna Nirmalya Sen. I work at here in L&T in Kolkata, in India, but I also volunteer as chair of ICO Scientific Committee in the construction industry, as well as ASSP India chapter as president. It is a great pleasure and honor to invite you all in this international event, and we have very highly respected dignitaries and speakers in the field with around 300 participants from several countries across the globe. In due course of the program, we will have technical discussions as well as a panel discussion at the end of the session. So I once again welcome all the distinguished speakers and panel members. Dr. Claudina Nogueira, who is our ICO Vice President from South Africa. Dr. Not Fringen from CPWR USA. Professor Sati Rajendran from Central Washington University, USA. Professor Somnath Gangopadhyay from Calcutta University, India, and Professor Dr. Rosa Maria Aurelis from Barcelona University and Duesto University, Spain. I'm grateful to all of you for having accepted our invitation and joining in this technical symposium. Now let me have the pleasure of presenting Dr. Claudina Nogueira, the Vice President of International Commission on Occupational Health, ICO. Claudina has a presentation which will follow. She is a board member of ICO and she had been a board member since 2012 to 2015 as well as 2015 to 2018. And now he is the Vice President. She has agreed to be present in this virtual event and address all of us. However, due to some overlapping schedule at the same time today, she could not make it. So, but we are fortunate to have her presentation, which is having also an audio. So let us listen to that. I will request Vinod to make it live.
Good afternoon to all. It is indeed a great pleasure and honor to be invited to deliver the opening address at this virtual symposium of the Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in the Construction Industry of the International Commission on Occupational Health, known as ICO. I am an occupational health consultant and a medical biochemist by qualification. My primary affiliation is the University of Pretoria, where I work as a project and data manager in the Faculty of Health Sciences. My secondary affiliations include being a board member of the non-profit organization, Workplace Health Without Borders, and of the South African Society of Occupational Medicine. But today I am pleased to be here with you in my capacity of Vice President for ICO Scientific Committees, and I take this opportunity to send you salutations and best wishes from the ICO leadership, made up of the three other officers, the President, Dr. Yuka Takala, the Secretary General, Professor Sergio Yavikoli, and the ICO Vice President for National Secretaries, Professor Song Kyu Kang, as well as the ICO board members. Colleagues and friends, we live in unprecedented and challenging times. Our world is in turmoil, and the ways in which we live and work have changed forever during the course of this year. The COVID-19 pandemic and all its health, economic, and social impacts and ramifications have ironically brought the world closer together. Never before has there been such a united front in collaboration and sharing of lessons learned, knowledge, and experience as we all try to do our bit towards managing and eradicating the pandemic as quickly and effectively as possible. There are probably very few workers worldwide who can say that they have not been affected by COVID-19. At international, regional, and local levels, and across all sectors, organizations have mobilized their resources and skills to develop and/or share all they can about COVID-19 for the benefit of their workers, their families, and their communities. These include policies, legislation updates, technical guidance documents, training materials, official statements, risk assessment tools, standard operating procedures, action frameworks, and return to work guidelines, among many others. Many organizations have dedicated COVID-19 resources on their websites and have shared learnings through countless virtual information sessions like webinars, symposia, conferences, and workshops. Next slide, please. ICOH has stepped up to the plate as anticipated and contributed to the ongoing global battle against the pandemic at organizational level, as well as through its various scientific committees, some of which have remained very active throughout the current year, even in the face of so many challenges. To this end, I will mention 4 activities of the ICOH Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in the Construction Industry during 2020. This scientific committee is chaired by Dr. Krishna, who is based in Kolkata, India. Firstly, early in the current year, before the COVID-19 pandemic became a global reality, the ICOH Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in the Construction Industry was one of 8 ICOH scientific committees that collaborated with the Indian Association of Occupational Health. This association organized and hosted the International Conclave on Occupational Health, also known as OCCUCON 2020, held in Mumbai, India from 28 January to 1st of February 2020. More than 200 delegates participated, representing 25 countries across 6 continents. Within the OCCUCON 2020, the Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in the Construction Industry organized and presented a workshop titled Ergonomic Assessment of Construction Tasks, which was coordinated by the Scientific Committee Chair, Dr. Krishna. Secondly, in June of 2020, the Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in the Construction Industry collaborated with the Scientific Committee on Rural Health to organize and host the 8th Annual Professional Development Conference of American Society of Safety Professionals, ASSP, the India chapter. The theme of this online conference was Striving Towards Sustainability Through Innovation and Digitalization in Health, Safety and Environment, and in particular, focused on applications that are relevant in the construction and agricultural sectors. Thirdly, in August of 2020, members of the Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in the Construction Industry contributed to the online certification course on workplace ergonomics organized and presented by the Faculty of Health and Wellness of Sri Sri University in Odisha, India. And fourthly, also in August of 2020, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, ROSPA, bestowed Dr. Krishna with the Distinguished Service Award, which is presented to safety professionals who have made a long-term sustained contribution to improving health and safety. This recognition was another feather in the cap of the Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in the Construction Industry. Last slide, please. Moving on to a broader and global context, a new COVID-19 construction industry research report dated August 2020 entitled COVID-19 and Construction, Early Lessons for a New Normal, has revealed that despite the pandemic, individual and team effectiveness and productivity have increased in the sector for various reasons. The research was conducted by experts from Loughborough University in the UK, who identified positive aspects for the construction industry during the pandemic, including better and more detailed task planning, reduced waiting time between tasks, increased space and therefore less overlap of trades, a boost in the use of technological solutions, more responsibility for individuals, and fewer meetings. In April 2020, the Construction Leadership Council of the UK released the 3rd version of its Site Operating Procedures, a guidance document to protect construction workers during COVID-19. The guidance is intended to introduce consistent measures on construction sites of all types and sizes, in line with the government's recommendations on social distancing. This third edition of Site Operating Procedures also offers guidance on hand washing, toilet facilities, canteens, changing facilities, planning to avoid close working, first aid and emergency response, and cleaning. The sources of both the guidance documents that I have just mentioned are included in this last slide, which lists selected resources on COVID-19 information for the construction industry. I salute the ICOH Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in the Construction Industry, chaired by Dr. Krishna Sen, for organizing and hosting this virtual symposium titled Recent Trends in Occupational Health and Safety in the Construction Industry, and I look forward to today's learnings. In closing, I reiterate that the new normal ways of living and working that are direct results of the ongoing global COVID-19 pandemic have shown us throughout most of the current year that never has it been more important to collaborate and share learnings. I end off with a quote from the ICOH president, Dr. Yuka Takala, in his message in the ICOH newsletter of August 2020, and I quote, "Stay well and support others to do so. Science and evidence will finally be more powerful than viruses." Friends and colleagues, I wish you well for the symposium and end off my welcome address by sharing with you my best wishes and sunny regards from Johannesburg in South Africa. Please take care and stay safe in our trying times. I thank you for your attention.
We extend our sincere thanks to Dr. Claudina for the inaugural speech. Let us move forward to the primary session of the symposium, where we have two of the eminent speakers with years of research expertise and experience in the field of occupational health and safety. As we go through this session, participant, please put in your questions in the Q&A section, and we will take few of the questions at the end of this session, and the remaining will be taken up in the panel during the panel discussion. And let me introduce our first speaker, Dr. Knut Ringen. Adding to his decades of work in occupational health, Dr. Ringen has been mentor for many occupational health and safety experts, including Dr. Sen, for many years. Dr. Knut Ringen is Senior Science Advisor at CPWR, that is the Center for Construction Research and Training in Washington, D.C., which he started. Over the years, he has directed a number of programs that have led to significant changes in safety and health policies in the US and internationally, especially in the field of construction industry. Since 1996, he has also led an effort to evaluate the health of older workers in America's nuclear weapons facilities and to provide them with compensation for occupational illness. He has been Vice President, Construction Section of the International Social Security Association since mid-90s. He chaired the Scientific Committee on Occupational Health in Construction Industry, International Commission on Occupational Health for over a decade, and was the chairman of US National Advisory Committee on Constructional Safety and Health from 1993 to 1997. He is an elected fellow of the European Academy of Sciences and Collegium of Ramazzini and other over 300 scientific publications and policy studies. So it is with special excitement that I'm pleased to request Dr. Ringen to start his presentation. Over to you, sir. Sir, you're muted, unmute.
Let me see.
Yeah, now
Do I need to open the slides, or are you going to run the slides?
we can run the slides, sir.
I can share the desktop from here.
Okay, okay.
No, I don't think I can. You have to run them from there. I'm sorry.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So good morning, good evening again. My name is Knut Ringen. I've been working in public health and occupational health for about 50 years. And today I'm going to talk briefly about a couple of issues that Dr. Sen asked me to contribute to. The first thing is I want to point out that this is a Vision Zero presentation. For those of you who are not familiar with Vision Zero, it's a campaign started by the International Social Security Association, with ICOH supporting it, and ILO, WHO, and so on. And next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. And I will explain briefly what it is, but you can find out all you need to know about it at its website, www.visionzero.global. The Vision Zero is an idea that enforces that workers should be able to live a lifetime in employment without premature disability or death resulting from work conditions. There is no reason, even in an industry as high risk as construction, that work cannot be done safely. And Vision Zero lays out what it calls golden rules. Others might call them performance objectives or leading indicators, or things that every workplace should do in order to stay safe. You can find all of those rules on this website. Next slide. So I've been coming to India for many times for the last 30 years, and gradually we've seen big improvements over those periods of time. At the same time, there's a huge discrepancy in India, as in every other country, between what the very best employers do and what most employers do. The very best employers, like L&T and so on, all operate, these Indian companies operate according to global standards and generally have very, very good safety programs. But most of construction is not like that. Construction consists of a lot of very small employers. In the US, 90% have less than 20 employees. Most of those employers are poorly capitalized. Lots of them work for clients or owners who are just interested in the shortest schedule and the cheapest price and nothing else. So there are many obstacles to overcome. 30 years ago, when we started CPWR, US was a very underdeveloped country in terms of safety and health, compared to many other leading countries like Germany, the Scandinavian countries, Japan, and so on. So we in the US, the construction industry, went to the International Social Security Association and asked them for help from those countries who were doing so well, to explain to us what we could do better that they were already doing. And as a result of that, over the last 30 years, through gradual improvements, we've seen pretty big changes in the ways things are done. And now our fatality rates compared to 1990 are 50 to 60% lower than they were then. So it's big improvements that have been very important, but we're still behind many other countries here in the US in terms of construction safety and health. Now, if we go to India, the same thing is generally true. Big improvements, but large sectors of the industry still operate without very good safety and health programs. And in India in particular, you have the challenge of having a very large and unskilled workforce doing lots of your manual material handling. That can only lead to terrible situations for these folks who are doing this work and working like this later in life. They get their musculoskeletal systems get very badly damaged, and we have a panel member here who can talk much more about this than I can, so we'll wait for that. But the idea that I wanted to talk today about was, how do we get away from having to rely on so much brute manual labor in handling materials? Because these injuries are the most common on construction workers over a lifetime. So it's really important to deal with. Next slide. You have to go back one slide. Oh. As I said, there's something going on with the slides. I don't know what it is. But I'm going to talk to you briefly about musculoskeletal disorders, because they are the leading cause of injuries, as I said to you. But also we have lots of knowledge about what causes these injuries and also about solutions. The problem is that employers have been very, very slow in handling these, in adopting these solutions. And the crux of this problem, like every other safety and health problem in construction, is that most injuries in construction results from very poor planning of work. Poor planning of work. And that's what two things I'm going to talk about. Poor planning leads to very serious injuries, and especially over a lifetime, a very, very bad situation for the workers who are in the industry. Next slide. So CPWR has developed a program to deal with this. It's called Best Built Plans. And the idea is to build safety into every job. And this is particularly directed at small employers who do not have the kind of expertise that the companies like L&T and the other large construction employers have. Next slide. And here you can see what it looks like. It has three focuses. One is on how do you plan a construction site and the work on a construction site. How do you train workers to work according to the plans that have been made? Can you go back one slide? And lastly, coaching. How do you mentor, coach, help your employees to achieve the kind of safety objectives that are introduced in the plans? So between the planning, training of the workforce, and coaching or helping the workforce, you can achieve a lot of safety. Next slide now. And this is really a planning tool to help contractors. And it's not only good for safety and health, but it also benefits greatly their business model, because it provides a guide to how to deal with every step of the project work, from project bidding to what you should plan before you start a job, how you should manage the project during the job, and what you should do at the end of the job and evaluate how well you've done. Next slide. So the kind of interactive resources that are available on the CPWR website, and by the way, all of these materials are available for use free of charge. They're open source. It's training resources in things like site planning, how to use equipment, how to lift properly, good work practices to avoid overload, and finally, as I said, how do you coach workers or help them, give them guidance in how to do work right. Next slide. And so here you can see some examples of the materials that are available both in English and in Spanish, and I'm not going to go through these in any detail. You will find them on the website. Next slide. And you will find all of these various kinds of materials, from ergonomics training to how to manage the ergonomics program. Next slide. And as a result of that, over the last 5 years, when we've been developing this program, it's been used. The employers who are using it now have reported to us that they have found that they've seen a 76% improvement in their ability to win bids when they submit proposals against tenders. 71% said that following these programs have improved their project quality a great deal. And 64% say that this has helped them retain staff, because staff feel that the work is going better, that the job sites are safer, and there are better places to work. And this is really important because, particularly among the skilled workforce in the US, we have now a very great shortage, and it's hard to maintain and keep workers. And so the idea that we could create a program that not only will save lives, improve health, but also help employers retain workers has had a really big impact on employers thinking about this program. Next slide. And here you can just see examples of some of the things, what you should do before work starts, on the jobs, and how you take advantage of that on future jobs. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about this for now, because you'll find everything that you need to know about it on our website, and we can have more. We'll talk more about it during the discussion session later. Next slide. You'd asked me to address a little bit about COVID. It's something that I've spent perhaps a third of my time on since February, really. And CPWR has developed lots of resources and a clearinghouse for everything we know about COVID prevention. And you can now see signs like this on every construction site in the US, and I suspect many also in India. Next slide. The essential controls, and all of these things require, once again, very careful planning. I want to emphasize that because we do that poorly. But if we plan better, we can control even COVID on our work sites. And by doing the following things. Every work site should have a COVID policy. That's the first of all. There should be procedures, and there should be one designated COVID coordinator on every construction site that is responsible for making sure that these things are implemented properly. Those workers who can work remotely should work from home or wherever else, but the whole purpose of this is to keep people away from each other. So if, for instance, an engineer can work at home rather than on the job site, that is a very good idea to the extent that they can. The third is that workers with symptoms that might suggest that they could have COVID should definitely not come to work. They should stay home. Now, in order for that to work, they have to get paid if they do that. And many employers are resisting this. They say, well, we can't be sure they're sick, blah, 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 and so on. But if you don't pay people to stay home, they won't stay home. They will take a chance, even if they believe they are sick, and come to work because they need the money. On the job, there are a number of things that should be done. First of all, every job site, construction site, should be secured anyway. There should be fencing around every one of them. That's the basic #1 principle of construction safety. And even though that's the case, we know that very many construction sites do not have this. But if you have a fencing system, then you also have entry points, and every entry point should have health checks. You should check workers to see whether they have symptoms. We have questionnaires for that, whether they have a fever temperature and so on. If they have any of these symptoms, they should be sent home, again with pay. On all of our job sites now, face covers are mandatory. These are the masks that you wear across your mouth and nose. All workers should keep at least a 2-meter distance between themselves, if possible. And to do that, it's very important to identify what we call choke points, where easily workers come together, like at entrance gates, in elevators, along narrow corridors, and so on, and create traffic patterns to prevent people from coming together, so that instead of having people go both ways in hallways, for instance, they should go only one way. It's very important to have much better sanitary systems than we have typically on construction sites, and it's very important to keep things like the toilets and facilities on sites very clean. And finally, it's really important to keep people away from these sites who don't need to be there. Should avoid come in contact with the suppliers and delivery people who come and deliver to equipment, materials, and so on, because it's very hard to say whether they are contagious or not. So the more we keep people away from each other, the less this is going to spread. Next slide. And here is a very good checklist that is on a CPWR website. Again, this is all open source, free, that you can use to see whether you have a good COVID program or have the essential elements of a COVID program. Next slide. And here are just some examples how this has been organized. If you look at the picture on the left-hand side, there's a walkway that is relatively narrow. But in order to keep people away as much as possible, they've created a one-way zone so that to the right of those stakes in the middle of the walkway, you walk away from where we're looking, and on the left side, people are coming towards us, would be coming towards us. Likewise, if you look at the sign in the middle, they've created upstairs and stairways going down from scaffolds or from floors on job sites. Likewise, they have elevators going up and elevators to be used going down, and that kind of thing. You can see on the right-hand side, workers are spaced out very far as they are walking to perhaps leave this job site. I'm not sure what they're doing, but you can see they're spaced out very well and properly. Next slide. And here again, you can see inside where they're working that the stair 1 is to be used going up and stair 2 to go down. And so there are separate entry and exit points and very well developed traffic patterns. Next slide. You can see here the toilet facilities are put very far apart and are separated from the hand washing station in the middle there, so that there's at least 2 meters between the hand washing station and any one of the toilets. Next slide. And we have many more portable hand sanitizer stations. These do not have to be very fancy. They're simple things. They're something any good construction worker could build. We now have those all across construction sites everywhere. Next slide. And on the right here, if you can see, there are times when workers cannot work entirely apart. For instance, these two guys are having to join some very heavy piping. So what we've done there is to create these barriers between them. If they need to work closely, it's hard to see this barrier because it's a very new one and very clean one. But there's a plastic barrier between these two guys so that they can stay separate. And ideally also in these kinds of situations, these workers should be wearing respirators and not just face covers if they're that close to each other. And on the left-hand side, you can see what has become much more normal now as a result. When we manage heavy material like these very large concrete bricks, we have now these mechanical lifting devices that have been put in place. So instead of 2 workers working together and lifting these manually and putting them in place, there is now 1 mason running the hoisting tool that brings these blocks to the mason there, and the mason puts them in place, and then they're entirely separate. This mason should have been wearing a face cover. Perhaps that was early in the epidemic when we had not yet made that mandatory, but today everybody on every construction site has to wear a face mask. Next slide. And rather than take up more time this morning, I'm just going to point you to where you can find more information on the CPWR websites. The first is this www.bestbuiltplans.org. That's a website devoted to that system that I mentioned to you earlier. about best built plans. Next slide. Here you can find the COVID clearinghouse that CPWR established, www.covidcpwr.org. This is where many participants in the industry, unions, employers, researchers and so on, have provided lots of materials that are all available there that you can use. Next slide. And for anything else about construction safety, you can go to the CPWR website, www.cpwr.com, where you will again find lots of materials on all kinds of different subjects that you can make use of freely. Finally, the last slide. If you have any questions, just contact me and I will try to answer them as best as I can. knutringen@msn.com. And with that, Krishna, I will turn it back to you, and we will have continue this during the discussion period.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rengan, for providing brief overview on the risk associated with the manual material handling and the resources available to facilitate the better planning to avoid these manual material handling risks. And thank you, sir. And our next keynote speaker is Dr. Satyanarayan Rajendran. And Dr. Satyanarayan Rajendran is currently Professor and Program Director for the Safety and Health Management Program at Central Washington University. He is also the Chair of Engineering Technologies, Safety and Construction Department. He holds PhD and Master of Science in Civil Engineering and from Oregon State University, and BE in Civil Engineering from Anna University, India. Under his directorship, more than 250 students have graduated from CW with safety degrees. Dr. Rajendran has published numerous articles and overseen grants focused on construction safety research to the practice. Dr. Rajendran has 6 years of professional construction safety experience and over 12 years of construction safety and health research experience. And his experience also includes a wide variety of buildings with complex mechanical systems. Thank you, Dr. Rajendran, for your presence, and you can proceed to your presentation.
Thank you for the introduction. Let me share my screen here. Okay. So can you see the screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Good morning again. Thank you, Dr. Notringen, for your excellent presentation. So it's hard to follow that. So just want to give you a quick background about my presentation outline. So like the introduction talked about, I've worked in construction for 6 years as a construction project safety manager, environmental health and safety manager, running projects from anywhere from $5 million US to $4 billion US. I was in charge of a large $4 billion US construction project, so I gained a lot of experience from that. So today, my presentation, I'm going to talk about a little bit about COVID and Western United States construction firms a little bit. I know Dr. Notringen talked a lot about it, so I'll keep it short. And then some brief overview about best practice research I've been involved with last few years. And then we'll go to the question sessions. So just an idea, US map here where I'm located, we are in the Washington state. People always confused with Washington, DC. So I'm from Ellensburg, Washington, very small town, 19,000 people, beautiful campus, college town. So it's snowing right now here in Ellensburg. It's pretty cold. Anyway, so most of you know this, but construction is a hazardous industry. So the chart here I just picked up from the OSHA website here. The rate of construction is among the third in different industries. It's in terms of pure numbers, construction has the largest number of fatal work injuries in the United States. So a few quick question. So as I mentioned, I have what we teach here is we have a Bachelor's of Science degree in Occupational Safety and Health degree. It's a 4-year degree program that prepares safety and health professionals. So if you go to the Seattle area, Washington State, Oregon, or California, quite a few of my former students are working as safety professionals in the industry, and there's a lot of connection there. So we do require an internship, which safety professional students have to do over the summer And I had over 30 students performing internship all over the country this past summer with COVID in high peak time. So I asked them a few questions and we brainstormed as a supervisor, what are the company's workers and adapt to COVID-19? So as Dr. Notringen mentioned, we required all the companies to have a safety policy in order for our students to go work there. And fortunately, all the 30 companies had a very detailed safety policy by April or May. So they had clear, detailed policies, protocol, and procedures in place. Most of them had 100% mask policy. Every one of them actually modified their new employee orientation training to make sure they incorporate code, protocols, and policies, procedures as part of the training. And everything Dr. Notringen mentioned was all practiced by these 30 firms. And these are some of the best companies in the United States. They come to recruit from programs. So this is not a common practice across the country. Like Dr. Notringen mentioned, there's the best and the most of the rest of the companies. So some of the challenges, as with any safety protocol and policies and procedures, compliance and enforcement was very difficult from what we understand. It was very difficult in March, April, and start to get better as we progress. One challenge all my students faced during the internship is using masks and safety glasses or eye protection. They ended up fogging up all the time, so it was creating additional hazards and safety issues. So employers had to invest in the good ones, invested in a lot of resources to provide anti-fog eye protection. And as we know, construction, it's a lot of sites in downtowns areas, metropolitan cities, very congested. Workers work in close proximity. So like, for example, pouring concrete for multiple footings and foundations and stuff. It was creating a lot of challenges for workers to work, maintain social distancing. So they had to do extra precautions and so forth. Companies, a lot of workers do carpooling and do share their tools. So that was a big challenge. Lunch areas, a lot of sites have large lunch areas, but pretty tight, congested. Workers sit right shoulder to shoulder to have their lunch. That was a big challenge. Companies had to figure out a way to mitigate that. And some part of the United States, the weather is pretty hot during summer, like Arizona and so forth. So you have all the respirator protection, mask, and everything else. Even during normal time, it's a big challenge for a construction worker. With the mask in place, they had to do additional on top of protection. So my students as safety interns, they were kind of in charge of these, making sure everything is going on well. And there was also the ideology between, my students face a lot of challenge about it. They keep getting I get calls from my students, Dr. Sathi, what do I do about it? So there was I use the word political here, but there are different ideologies. Some workers did not believe in the virus, and some supervisors did not believe in the virus. So they had some sites, supervisors walk around without masks. They're like, this is not a big deal, I'm gonna not follow it. So that was a huge challenge faced, at least in the United States. I'm not sure about outside the States, but that was a big issue. And working through pains, Dr. Notringen mentioned about pay. Construction workers traditionally, from my own experience, talking to them, having worked with over 10,000 workers in the field, they like to work through pain for some reason. They don't feel to speak up about pain. So even without pay, with COVID, they don't want to say if they're sick and so forth. That was another challenge, and the companies had to do a lot of training and outreach to make sure workers are doing well. So I won't go too much into details of what some of the best practices they do. Like I talked about non-fogging glasses. They treated COVID as a hazard. So planning is critical, as we heard before. They treated COVID-19 as a hazard, and they used the pre-task planning process every morning to consider it as a hazard and plan accordingly. So it was integrated into the safety process, which helped very well. They did a lot of toolbox talks. If you're not familiar, toolbox talks are right next to the toolbox every morning, a small crews addresses. Mental health was one of the biggest topics. Even without COVID, it was a big issue. Construction has one of the highest suicide rates among men in the United States. So with COVID, it kind of exacerbated the situation. So there was a lot of focus on that during toolbox talks and so forth. Our inaugural speaker mentioned about less meetings, and that was in construction. We have this tradition called Monday mass safety meetings, where we have a 600 worker site. All of them get together and have a meeting in a tight spot, breathing over each other. So this wasn't possible. So they had to split up those meetings into multiple smaller meetings and so forth. So anyway, I just want to share my experience in the state of Washington and a few others in the United States. How the company adapted, the various challenges they faced, and what are the best practices companies adopted. So the next few minutes of my presentation, I'm going to talk about my recent research work and also current one and the past one. Construction, like, again, I'm quoting Dr. Notringen because I agree with him on a lot. In construction, especially in the state of Washington, we have best construction firms, large corporations who have a lot of resources, who have done work for a long time, who can invest in safety practices, protocols, and planning. And then you have the rest, like 90% of the companies are smaller. So when I have worked in the industry, I've always walked around site amazed at all the innovations each worker come up with, each companies come up with, and also as a site come up with. A lot of times these originate from a site and kind of dies off on the site. It doesn't get transferred to a different work site or different company or different workers. So I always wanted to find out a way to extract those best practices and share it with the outside world, especially the smaller contractors who cannot invest in research and development or invest in money to develop a big program. Just like the CPWR's Best Built Plan website or idea. So one of the recent research I just completed this past year is called Safe and Innovative Work Best Practices for Mechanical Crafts booklet. It's a collection of best innovation practices implemented by mechanical contractors, employers, manufacturers, and general contractors that have seemed to work, or it's kind of not scientific, it's anecdotal. And we published a booklet. It's a free resource. It's open resource. It's available on the internet. Here's a website here. And it's a collection of 72 innovative best practices organized by product innovation, process innovation, and procedure innovation. Again, we went to a lot of contractors, more than 100 of them, and talked to a lot of workers and tried to figure out what innovations they have done for safety problem or challenge they faced in the field. So we came up with a lot of interesting, so some are common, some are not common. So we published this early this year. It's available in Spanish and English, and I have some copies. If you're interested, let me know. I can mail it to you, a hard copy. So here's an example of innovative best practice. So on the top picture, what you see is a pipe stand. Typically, you have 3 legs and you have a single holder to hold the pipes. What happens is, even when I've been walking through sites, it's always a trip hazard. I've seen workers trip on it and kind of creates extra work to step around it, go around it. So this company on their shop have come up with a single leg stand with multiple holders to hold their pipe. It eliminated the trip hazard and slip hazard, and also increased production and kind of made a lean process. This is an example. I'll go through a few examples. If the book is out there, I'm not going to spend too much time on everything. Here is a motorized work platform. So typically, even today, you see construction sites, electricians, mechanical crafts use a Baker scaffold, which is its on wheels, mobile scaffold. It creates some safety issues, and they have to move it. And some workers do some shortcuts to gain some advantage over. So this powered work platform it's amazing. I've talked to multiple contractors. It's kind of works really well. You don't have the workers to get down and up and every time. Another issue with construction site, if you walk through it, electrical cords, electrical wires on the ground, major trip hazard. And also when you have equipment running over it, it causes multiple issues too. And even today it's there. So multiple contractors have come up with different ways. It's kind of, they use the prevention through design. So they put these anchors into the concrete when they pour concrete. So they have a way to hang these cores off the ground. So it eliminates a lot of hazards and mitigates a lot of hazards. So this contractor here at the bottom picture has used a hook, metal hook, but due to the worry about those rubbing on the wire outer jacket and damaging it, they kind of dipped it in hot rubber and let it cool down, and it creates a smooth surface so they can hang those. So different innovations. Here's another example of when you have a guardrail, which is a great thing. Majority of the contractors are doing those, but when you have a ladder close to a guardrail, it creates another hazard. You're exposing the workers. Charter Mechanical is a very good company, safety director, a well-known friend of mine. They came up with a movable guardrail system. They can move around with this system when they are working on a ladder close to the guardrail. They add this system here, which increases the height of the guardrail and keeps the workers safe. Another interesting one, it's a company called McDonnell Miller. They are located in Washington State. Forklifts struck by pinch point hazard, crush point hazard, property damage, multiple issues when you're operating a scissor lift within a facility. So they use these warning lights for front and side that allows workers to be warned, hey, there is a forklift coming, so be aware. And I think the final one is pipe racks. It's been going on for a few years, but more and more companies are doing it. So if you imagine a work site where they have to have workers on ladders, scaffolds, scissor lifts, tight spots, trying to build these, putting these pipes in place, MEP system. But now with the new modeling and 3D modeling and so forth, companies are building these up in a shop, a controlled environment, and shipping up to the site and then picking it up with a crane and then putting it in place. And I'd introduce the other hazards, but the net gain is a positive in terms of hazards eliminated. So this book has a lot of these, 72 of these best practices that not only in the United States, but anywhere in the country, if you're around, you can take a look at it and see what's best and you could use it. So that just completed these research projects. So this one was a little older, but Dr. Notringen talked about planning is key in safety. So this one is a publication that talks about all the safety management best practices in terms of policies, protocols from a construction life cycle standpoint. So what are the planning resources that can be utilized from all the way from a conceptual side of the project to the end of the startup and commissioning. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. That book is available on the link I showed you, but it talks about, for example, we have a section on prevention through design. CPW has done a lot of work on it, and it shows what are the different techniques and stuff where they use for prevention through design. So we talked about planning. Planning has to start early. So this checklist here as an example based on best practices from multiple contractors, the best ones, we should focus on before you hire a subcontractor on site, before bid, before construction starts, and before they step foot on the construction site. This allows general contractors to make sure, have we taken care of these, and are the subcontractors have a safety program in place, and have we communicated all these requirements to the plan. So for example, here you see a corrective action plan in this one here, which means if a subcontractor has a subpar safety performance, it allows the general contractor to mentor the contractor and require certain additional requirements, either require an additional safety professional or a well robust safety program and so forth. So this book consists of around 23 chapters or 25 chapters, goes through each phase of construction, has multiple example forms that companies have invested hundreds and thousands of dollars to create and programs to create that could be used by contractors who are coming into the industry new, or they don't have the resources to or the capital to invest. It's kind of a sharing mechanism. There's no plagiarism or anything in safety because that's my opinion. a lot of people agree to it, is the end goal is to send workers home safe and healthy to their families. So sharing is key. That's what we're trying to do with these researchers, trying to make sure people come out and share their resources. Not spend on that one. So safety training is, I saw one of the, we'll be talking about in the discussion session, but safety training best practices, it has a chapter on how to develop good training practices and specific to your job site and so forth. And it has a chapter on inspections. What are the different types of inspection that happens on a construction site, which work, which doesn't, and how do you develop those? Okay, it also has a very detailed chapter on how to develop emergency management plan for your job site from start to finish. It is based on best practices from multiple contractors on what are the different things you do, how do you develop site plan. So here, this one, companies have been doing this for a long time. It's easy when you have COVID to adapt to it, when you had to put on the circulation plans and so forth. So those companies have found it very useful to adapt quickly. And it also has a chapter on turnover. When you finish the project and hand over a project to a client or owner, what are the different safety issues that happen? So I faced that part has been the challenging phase. When you have the owner occupy a part of the building and you have construction contractors on site, it has unique challenges. So how do you do that part safely? So that chapter addresses a lot of those things. And the current last research is also based on best practices we are working on currently with Oregon State University and AGC of Washington, is developing construction site safety management training case studies. So these are topics we have a lot of trainings on, some we don't have trainings on, but we wanted to make sure we incorporate real case scenarios from different contractors doing really good work, some recent accidents and so forth, develop a trainings that's completely not a video-based training. It's not a lecture PowerPoint training that's going to bore everybody to sleep. It's we are working on these, and we, based on like our huge team of safety professionals and an oversight committee consisting of management and labor organization, we came up with these are the 8 topics that's very current relevant topic that we need to focus on to develop construction site safeties. So if you notice, mental health is there, diversity is there, and infectious disease, of course, we're going to talk about COVID protocol and what we learned and so forth. Anyway, I kind of ran through the presentation real quick because I had a limited amount of time, but thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the discussion session. I'll turn it over to Dr. Sen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Rajendran. And I would like to take a moment to thank both of you, Dr. Notringen and Dr. Sathi Rajendran. Both of you have tremendously benefited, I think, the audience with the best practices, as well as how the planning and organizing the workplace can help, as well as the COVID details. I am sure the options which have been highlighted by Dr. Notringen as well as by you, based by research and also practice for several years in US industries as well as elsewhere in the world, I think would be very helpful. The resources which is provided would be very helpful. Those who are sending the response feedback to this, we will be also sharing the presentations, the latest presentations which we have received, so that they can keep the contact with the learned guests and the speaker today. And then we will now move to the panel discussion, where you can please stay so that we can address any questions as well as the general discussion as well. Yeah. Thank you very much to Dr. Notringen and Dr. Sathi Rajendran. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, we will proceed to the next part of panel discussion. I will request Murli to take us through. Yeah. So you are not audible, Dr. Note. You are not audible. He's speaking to someone. You are not audible.
Okay. Dr. Ringan, please unmute.
Or he's speaking to someone else. Okay, we can carry on. Murli, you can.
Yeah, thank you to our both of our speakers, and next we will proceed to our next session, which is a panel discussion, where we have three experts from three different fields with lot of experience and expertise, and our two, as said earlier, our two speakers, both Dr. Ringan and Dr. Rajendran, will be joining them. And let me introduce our panelists for today. First being Professor Dr. Rosa Maria Orioles Ramos. Professor Rosa is currently a professor in Barcelona University and Deusto University, and she is the Director of Sustainability and Environmental Health at Hospital University de Belvedere, Spain. Professor Rosa holds Graduate of Science in Chemistry Engineering from Barcelona University, Masters in Environmental Management Engineering, and PhD in Occupational Health and Safety specialization from Suffolk University, and was a research fellow in Will Cornell Medical College, Cornell University. Currently, she is a board member of International Commission on Occupational Health Board and Prevent Board, and she is the expert advisor to the European Commission on Health Force Workplace. Previously, Professor Rosa was Occupational Health and Safety Technical Officer in Spain's National Institute for Safety and Health at Work, and she's also founder and CEO of two tech startups which focus on digital health solutions, and have worked extensively on health issues including the indoor air quality, hazardous dust exposure, prevention of bloodborne exposure to the nano drugs, and managing dangerous substances, as well as about the effects of work organization. I welcome Dr. Rosa to for the symposium, and our next panel member is Professor Dr. Somnath Gangopadhyay. Professor Gangopadhyay is chartered economist and human factors specialist. Professor Gangopadhyay is presently working as a professor in Occupational Economics section, Department of Physiology at University of Kolkata. Before that, he served as an economist and work physiologist in steel plant under Steel Authority of India Limited at Bhilai, India. In addition to this, presently he is the secretary of a scientific committee on SME and informal sectors of ICOH and honorary general secretary of Physiological Society of India, and has been elected as member of Economic Section, Bureau of Indian Standards. Currently, he is acting as consultant editor of International Journal of Occupational Safety and Health, associate editor of BMC Musculoskeletal Disorder, and member of the editorial board for different national and international journals. He has been Comfort Fellow, Chartered Institute of Economics and Human Factors, and awarded chartered status from the same. He also received FABMS title by the Indian Association of Biomedical Sciences. Till date, he has more than 200 research publications to his credit. Welcome, Dr. Gangopadhyay. And another panelist of today's discussion is Dr. Krishna Nirmalya. Dr. Sen is a chartered engineer and a professional engineer with more than 3 decades of experience in construction industry in various roles, mostly in the corporate functions. And he holds PhD from University of Petroleum and Engineers Energy Studies and Advanced International Diploma in Occupational Safety and Health and Development from the National Institute of Working Life through Swedish government scholarship. Later, he studied a PG level course on research in injury prevention and safety promotion at Karolinska Institute, Sweden. He has been a fellow of Institute of Engineers India, fellow of Association of Engineers. He recently got elected as a fellow of Collegium Ramazani, an international scientific society of Harvard. He has received multiple professional accolades, including safety awards from the Institute of Engineers, Edgar Monsanto Queenie Safety Professional of the Year for the 2013-14 year, from American Society of Safety Engineers and Distinguished Service Award from ROSPA in 2020. A strong proponent of industry and institution partnership, he has guided many students at the master's level and also got several publication and conference presentations to his credit. And I will once again welcome everyone to the panel discussion. Thank you all for the presence. And for this panel discussion, we have gathered few questions, and I will put forward this for the respective speakers. And as we go forward, we will also take some of the questions from the live participants. Thank you all. And the first question we would like to hear from all of you. And as this recent pandemic has put forward these additional risks in terms of occupational health and safety at the workplaces, and what can be the better approach in this new normal to mitigate these challenges?
Dr. Shane, please unmute. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Now, I was requesting whether Dr. Notringen would like to respond to this first.
Right.
Yeah.
Sir, unmute yourself. Dr. Ringen.
Yes, I hear a lot about something called the new normal, but I don't know what that is. I think we have a temporary abnormal situation that we have to that we're dealing with and fairly effectively. It's a little bit hard to say. We do not have very good data yet on whether our COVID measures are having the kind of impact we think they're having, but we believe that construction workers are generally better off in terms of COVID than many other occupations. But I think we've learned a lot already from this COVID situation that's going to benefit the industry for a long time. Not the least, the recognition that they really have to plan the work better, as I said before. Anybody who's worked in construction for a long time has been on a job site where, for instance, supplies have been delivered and nobody has thought about where you should put them when the truck comes to the job site. And so somebody says, well, put them over there, we'll worry about it later. And that is kind of the state of planning that exists still in a lot of our construction projects. But hopefully, this has forced people to be a little bit better prepared than they have been before, and that I think is the best thing we can hope for to come out of this disastrous situation.
Doctor, thank you, Dr. Ringen.
If I can add one more thing, and
yeah,
that is the recognition of construction, at least here in the US, or much of construction, as an essential industry. A lot of construction cannot stop, unlike much other work. And maybe also the authorities will think more about how do we make sure that this industry can operate as efficiently and effectively as possible, given that it is essential to us. I think that's the first time I've truly heard that expressed very well in this pandemic.
Dr. Rajendran, you'd like to add something to it?
Just to briefly, like I agree with Dr. Ringen. It's anecdotal, but my experience with my students working on construction sites and with my colleagues in the industry, I've heard only one case, one company, a large company, and one job site that was shut down because of an outbreak, very minor outbreak. So generally speaking, the 30 students I had, all of them continued their internship. None of the sites were shut down. They have adapted pretty well. So it kind of validates Dr. Notringen's statement that construction has adapted pretty well.
Dr. Sen, you'd like to add something to it?
No, exactly. Our experience in India was, almost similar. The precautions what was taken here, and the outcome. I mean, the number of people that got affected was very, very less actually in our camps, as well as in our, those who were commuting also from their own homes to the project sites. I think, of course, we enforced a certain guideline, but that enforcement was not 24/7. It was for certain time when they are coming to work, as well as if they are in the camp, to some extent in the camp. But we found that the infection was very well contained as of now, and they could recover also very fast. So maybe the immunity and the energy possibly have played a very key role. So fortunately, in our domestic project sites, the experience was very, very positive in terms of COVID. Yeah. Yeah. And also there was, of course, a response from Rosa, which I just received regarding the working hours. I mean, regarding the shift duration, since she could not join, and in fact, I was just in touch with her through the mobile. I mean, regarding, there was a response regarding the shift duration. I think she has mentioned that in Spain, the working hours is 8 hours a day, and there is a lunch break with and also a break for breakfast, but then they begin at 9 and stop at 1, and then they end at 6. So the schedule is very scrupulous. If you see in comparison to India, the shift, of course, there is a, for the government jobs and all, there are very regulated shift, but for the construction industry, the shift is expandable to some extent in many of the projects. And of course, they get compensation in terms of the money, but then the fatigue and things are a serious question. So that is, I think, stem from the shift duration. So I understand in Europe it is 8 hours, in India also 8 hours legally, but in construction some deviation is often seen because of the nature of the business or things like that. Though financial compensation are extended. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Maybe Murli, you can go to.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Gangopadhyay, you would like to add something?
Yes, I want to say something about the new normal, as we are discussing about the new normal, situation in India. New normal is actually in Indian condition, there's the two pillars. The two pillars, there's some defects in the two pillars in the new normal. One is the economic standpoint and the societal standpoint. So it is a very difficult situation now we are facing in India, especially in the construction industry. And now we are trying to make some policy in which way we have to, the construction industry, mainly the informal sectors, should survive in these new normal situations. So there are so many policies already made, but I do not know whether that can be applied in the informal sectors. Maybe that will be applied in the formal sectors, but that thing is going on in India. We are trying to make some policies for this to survival, for the survival of these industries, of the construction industry. So this is I want to add these things with this, what is the COVID in the COVID-19 situation and the new normal conditions in situations in India, especially in India. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gangopadhyay. On the same lines, Dr. Sen, I would like to know, like in construction, it is hard to maintain this physical distancing at the workplaces as the nature of this work itself. So, what would be the better way of dealing with this in terms of physical distancing?
You see, actually, we have been found that very challenging, but we had some additional measures implemented here. For example, we asked them to wear a face shield for the people who have to come close by. Second thing, what we did is the planning, because many times in Indian projects, the number of people are much more. So because of the new normal, since there are a lot of people gone away, we found that the productivity of the people gone up, because the job where 4 or 5 people were, just like that being present, maybe 2% or 3% are able to do it, of course, some mechanization. So the social distancing became a challenge, but because of the dilution of manpower at the project, as well as awareness about the requirement of social distancing, perhaps the productivity gone up in many cases, and also the mechanization also has improved, because more and more dependence on mechanical aid also have been thought of. So I think the social distancing still remain a challenge in couple of activities. Social distancing is a problem, but I think with a balance of additional control measure and mechanization, and we are compelled to have less number of people for some time in the beginning. That also possibly has created a situation where we were had to achieve that.
Dr. Rajendran, would you like to add to something to it?
I think I just, not much to add to this, but Dr. Sen talked about shifts, question about worker shifts in US. It's all over the place. So we have a federal law that mandates a work shifts, times, and duration. And also we have collective bargaining agreements that kind of trumps what's in the what dictates the hours. So the sites I have worked, workers have worked from, start time has been sometimes 6 a.m., 5 a.m., or 7 a.m. And some sites have worked 8 hours work shifts for 5 days a week. Or I have seen sites where we work 4 days for 10 hours. And I've also been on sites with a fast track schedule where we work 6 days a week, 10-hour work shift. So it's kind of varies across the. Am I a fan of 6 days, 10 hours work shift? No, it was not recommended, because I've seen how much strain and stress puts on a worker. But the work shift varies across the paradigm there. There is no set work shift.
And we've had a lot of discussion about this over the years, about what is an optimal work day. But then it depends on which objective you want to achieve. The 4-10, the 4 working days at 10 hours a day is very popular among the workforce, because it means they get a 3-day work weekend to enjoy. But those extra 2 hours each day is probably pretty hazardous to the industry. We know that people are more likely to have injuries towards the end of these shifts. They're also more likely to have injuries towards the end of these work weeks, which has to do with exhaustion in both cases. And with that comes both the likelihood of incurring an injury, the likelihood of being more careless than otherwise. So all of these things come together. I personally do not think that the 10-hour workday is a great thing, strictly from a safety and health perspective. But that's generally not accepted by our industry, because people like the shorter work week.
Thank you, Dr. Ringan. And I would like to ask the next question to Sir Gangopathy. Dr. Gangopathy.
Yes, thank you. In case of the, that circadian rhythm, if we think about the circadian rhythm, then if you increase the day in the shift system, that will become better for the, to cope with that particular shift or particular, that particular rhythm of the body will cope with that particular shift. And then the probability of accidents will be decreased. So that thing is there. So if you increase the days in the shift, like the 12 hours or something like that, or the days means that is the 5 days a week or 7 days a week, like that. If you increase like the 10 days a week for the continuous in a particular shift, then the person will become habituated, or person will become, accommodate with that particular shift. So that is better, I think so. So if you increase that time, or if you increase the the total days in the particular shift, that will become a beneficial factor for the for the workman, and then the accident and the possibility of the accident also will be decreased. But I do not know about the, in case of the informal sectors, they used to do more and more hours, and they used to do, that continuously in a particular shift for the 10 days or more than 10 days. So then we find that there are some accidents also there. So probably that is not the reason, but the circadian, if we just think about the circadian rhythm, so circadian rhythm has some contribution, that if you increase the number of days and if you increase the number of hours in the working period, then that will become that will increase the efficiency of the workman, because the workman will become habituated with the particular body rhythm. Body rhythm would be habituated with a particular shift that is there.
Thank you, Dr. Gangopadhyay. I would like to ask on the similar lines, like as in construction, as the extended hours are associated with our work. And the construction workers are most prone to this fatigue, as you can say. So, is there any quick test or the methods available to check upon the levels of fatigue?
So there are, that what type of fatigue you want to find out. That is, there are the two types of fatigues. The one is the mental fatigue, and another one is the physical fatigue. If you want to find out the mental fatigue, there is also some test is there. That is the critical flicker fusion test, through which you can find out the mental fatigueness. And for the physical fatigueness also, you can find out through the same test. That is the very quick test. There is a critical flicker fusion test by which you can find out the physical fatigue of the person. And but the reliability is the very important thing, the factor of the reliability during the test. So you have to do the test on the more and more workers, then the reliability of the test result will be there. Otherwise, there's so many factors will interfere with the ultimate test result. So that one test I can say that is the critical flicker fusion, through which you can find out the whether the person is physically fatigued or the mentally fatigued. So the alertness, by the alertness, and there's another test also there, which is known as the reaction time. It is very much related with the mental alertness of the workers. So by the reaction time, you can find out whether that person is mentally alert with the particular particular that work hour or particular that conditions or not. And if it is not, mental alertness is less, then you should not involve him in this in that particular shift. So that thing is the two tests what we can find out, by which we can find out the special, mainly the mental alertness, but also some amount of physical alertness also we can find.
Thank you, Dr. Gangopadhyay.
Okay.
Dr. Note, this question will be for you. And training of our workers at the site is often a big challenge for us. And what would be your recommendations to increase the effectiveness of such trainings?
This is a really important question and a very complicated one. Training on the site is absolutely critical. Typically, the people who do the training on the site are also the frontline managers, the foreman, and maybe a superintendent or supervisor who have maybe very little experience in training and who have very little and very poor materials to work with. So I would say that the most important training in work site is at the start of every work shift. There should be an orientation of workers about the tasks and the works that they should be doing, and a reminder about the kind of safety risks that they face. This is typically what we call a toolbox talk of some kind. What is this, Krishna? I see a telephone. Can't hear you.
Please unmute.
Unmute yourself, right?
Unmute yourself.
I am trying to join Dr. Doza because there was some issue with her. So I just requested her to join through mobile. So she, of course, able to listen, but now she will be able to speak also.
Thank you very
You
much.
please turn your mobile like that, you know.
Turn it. Turn your
You
mobile.
turn your mobile.
Horizontally.
You can turn your mobile. You are asking me or asking her?
No. Now it is okay.
It is fine now.
But I think Professor Sanya can talk about also about training on the work site. He has much more experience with that than I do.
Yeah, Dr. Rajendran, I would like to add few more your thought on this.
Training is it's always a challenge. So like one research we're working on is creating a site-based training for certain topics, make it based on real-world scenario and so forth. So when I was on construction sites, even right after coming out of college, as a 24-year-old, 25-year-old, I was in charge of doing training, a new employee training every single day. And here I am standing in front of veterans, 20 years, 25 years construction, training them what to do and how to do it. So at some point I figured out it's not going to work because they're going to go to sleep. They're not going to take me seriously because my credibility is low because I've only been in construction a few years or a few days in some cases. I turned into a facilitation mode because when I talk about fall protection, those 10 or sometimes I've had training with 150 workers in the same room. So between those people, they have a lot of experience from every single topic you can imagine about. So it turned into instead of a trainer, I became a facilitator. Like, okay, this is the topic I used to say. You all know more than I do on this topic. Let's start with your experience on this, what works, what doesn't work. So when the workers starting to talk and speak up, there was more credibility among their co-workers because they're hearing from one of their own. So that made it well, like one example I can share from a training standpoint. It's not like a wet behind the ears, a young rookie like me telling them what to do. It's their peer training. They are sharing their experience and sharing what to do and what not to do and so forth. So that's just something to add to it.
And let me just go back and add again the importance of the foreman. Typically in construction, we promote good workers to become foremen. If a guy is a really good carpenter, we figure he would also be a really good foreman. So we make him a foreman without providing any kind of training or giving any expertise in what it takes to manage other people. We just say, now you're ready to manage a crew because you're a really good guy. But in reality, managing a crew is very, very difficult, and the crew is going to respond exactly to what how the foreman functions. If the foreman does not have a good safety attitude, the crew isn't going to either. And that's really, I think the biggest thing is to get our foremen trained well and get them to be committed to safety and health, and let them again train and mentor their workforce in a very good way with regard to their safety practices.
Yeah, if I may come in, you see this, we actually started a gang safety leader as concept in our organization sometimes back, which primarily picking up one crew, I mean, who is technically sound in the particular group, and then, giving these additional responsibilities so that he handhold them and also give them the guidance and training. But he remained a crew member. But that was very effective in terms of communicating the requirements and give the newcomer as well as comparatively less experienced worker to follow the safety and health requirement, because they were recognized. In one of the projects, we actually given them additional honorarium, not exactly wages, but additional honorarium, and also special helmet and special identity. And that actually worked very well because these workers who have lot of knowledge, skill, and long experience, they become the ambassador and try to help the objective of Vision Zero or whatever you say. I mean, keeping the risk under control, and that was very good example experience we had in one of the major projects. Yeah.
CPWR has a training program on the website called Foundations for Safety Leadership. It is aimed at providing frontline supervisors with the skills that they need to lead effectively in safety and health. And that program has become very popular, and the employers who are using this say that they have very good results with it.
And one thing I want to add, that the communication part in training, I think it is a very important part, important thing, because in which way the trainer will communicate that thing to the workers in the among the workers. And if the person is the person is he is also worker, then it will be better for him to communicate the things to the other workers. So the communication part is very important. And as Nood already mentioned, that is the the interactive training. I think that training is the most important and most effective training. So in the industry, that the interactive training and the communication in the training, we should give more importance. I think so. This is my opinion on the training part. Thank you.
Those also have mentioned a lot on training, and we have also started initially now for the last couple of years on experiential learning. We have converted to virtual reality training, and that earlier it was people have to take to a particular station,
right.
But now the virtual reality training, we have developed those modules. It took a lot of time to develop those modules with minor detail, but that is working very good with skilled people for high risk activities like very high structure as well as crane operators to perceive the risk. I think going forward, the technology, including the virtual reality, the augmented reality training, which we have developed, a few would be very helpful to bring that risk perception among the worker, because many a time they fail to perceive the risk to the correct level. So that is a great experience for us, and also some of the near miss or major high potential near misses, we have converted to the virtual reality training to bring that lost experience to all. I think that is a great learning for us, and we are finding very and even the engineers and managers finding it very useful.
Yeah. Thank you all, and we have one. We are taking one question from the participants. As construction is having lot of turnover of the workmen is very frequent. How we can implement this occupational health surveillance programs for this short-term rotating teams?
I'll rephrase the question, and maybe I'll try to little respond. The question is that people keep on changing at construction projects. So how to, how to follow them up? I am sure in US you will not have a problem because they are in the database. But fortunately in India, I read a report maybe 6 months or maybe a few more months ago that our database also will be created with the Aadhaar number, and once that is available, so it will be possible to track them, their exposure and their history. But we would like to hear from maybe Dr. Ringen and Sati, in case you like to respond to this problem of worker turnover and mapping their exposure. If you have any sort of like to tell us something, because we don't have that much as of now, but we hope to have it because the system is going to come as per the announcement of the government. Yeah.
Well, we do not have a good system for this at all in the US. There are some countries who have better. You know, in the US, the practice is not to have permanent employment in construction. You're hired for a project. Typically, there might be some parts of the workforce that work all the time for one employer, but many of the workers go from employer to employer all the time. And there is no system for tracking what kind of exposures that they have had in the past, or what kind of injuries that they may have had at all. And I do not anticipate, at least in my lifetime, that we will have any kind of system like that in the US. That's getting to be shorter.
I agree with Dr. Newt on that. It's the only system I'm aware of. It's not injury related, like substance abuse, like drug testing and things like that, or driver's records with our transportation department record. So those things are tracked, and there are requirements to, but injuries, accidents, even health exposures within an employer, yes, but I don't think there's no overall tracking system. I mean, that's I agree. It's really hi-fi stuff that's very hard to come up with.
Thank you.
But we will learn from India once you start doing this. I'm sure you will perfect it very fast.
But we are long, far away, but things are hopefully will be available. At least in our organization, we have started with workman, management system for training as well. And that is in a very beginning stage for tracking the training. And so we will be able to know if one worker is going to another project. We will come to know the unique identity number about their training and other history, as well as and medical history as well. So maybe within the organization we will have, but that also started maybe 1.5 years, but it is a large organization, so it will take time to get everybody in. But we have started, yeah, fortunately.
And at least here in the US, we have certification, of workers in many different skills areas. Some of those certifications go back a long ways. For instance, for electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, welders, they all have to have various kinds of certification cards. And now workers for many other things have to have those also. CPWR works mainly with what we call the union part of the construction industry in the US, the part of the industry where all the workers belong to trade unions. That's a pretty large chunk of the more formalized industry in the US. And within those unions, they have training programs that track all of the training that each member has had. So that if that member goes from one employer to another, the employer can contact the union and find out what kind of training qualifications does this individual worker have. So we have a lot of those things, but those are all systems that have been developed by the industry themselves, not through government action.
Thank you all. We have one last question before closing of this panel discussion. One of our participants would like to know, are there any technical studies available for this assessment of human errors associated with the occupational safety in particular?
I'm sorry, you said assessment of what?
Human error associated.
Human error.
Yeah.
What's a human error, or what is not a human error? I might ask the question. I can answer this very shortly. There is a tendency to try to put the burden of safety and risk on the worker, when in fact there should be much more emphasis on the organization. If a worker is working unsafely and the employer allows that, then obviously the employer is as much a problem with this as is the worker. Frequently workers work unsafe because they're working under schedules that are unreasonable. They're being told to do things that they should not do in the interest of expediency. There might be cost factors involved. I can remember employers saying we cannot afford to provide hearing protection plugs for workers, because if we do that, then we have a higher cost than other employers who will not do that. But I think if I would much rather see us place an emphasis on the organizations and see how they evaluate how their work is being performed. This thing that Dr. Sen mentioned earlier, I think it was you, who talked about near misses, continuously evaluating the work site to see if you have near misses. How do you prevent those? That's the first thing. We would like to have workplaces entirely free of near misses. If we have those, it's unlikely we're going to have many injuries.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. So, Professor Gangapada, like to say anything on this
yes,
part, and then we can wrap up, I think.
Yes. You know that as an ergonomist, we never believe on the human error. We believe there's something is there, and for which the human, you know, they normally the human mistakes or human error is there because something behind the accident is there. So we should find out the underneath causes of the accidents, and then we just find out that if we go in depth of the, you know, the different causes of the accident, then ultimately we found, oh, because due to this reason, and it is the, you know, there's a problem of understanding of the human is there in the particular system, and this is actually the system error, it's not the human error. So we never believe on the human error, but actually the human error in case of the, you know, that in which way you can identify the human error, when there will be some near misses or something like that, then just as Dr. Shen already mentioned that in the near misses, they have to analyze the near miss and then try to rectify the conditions. That thing is there. But, you know, during the accidents, it is very difficult to, you know, identify whether the real cause is there. But after the accidents, we can find out that thing. And then again, the human error, identification of the human error is like the, you know, the giving the blame the human that this is for this accident is due to this accident is due to you, and that's not the thing, you know. So human error, identification of the human error, we should find out the system first, that the system design of the system, and whether the system is running properly or not, whether the communication between the human with the system is proper or not, we should find out that thing. And if we find out that there is some problem in the communication between human and the system, then we should rectify that. And this is a very important thing in case of for the rectification part. And then we can remove the human error, so-called human error. So human error means that you have to rectify the conditions, rectify the system. So that means if you rectify the system before the, you know, the running of the system, or you know, when the actual human will actuate the system, before that, then you can, in that way, you can remove the so-called human error. That means you can prevent the human error. So that means the system error. So we should find out the system error at first, and then we'll just think out that in which way we can, you know, that remove the system error so that the performance of the human being will be increased. There will be no accident. This is my concept. I think so. But I do not know what about Dr. Shen and Note. If you have any opinion about this human error. Note already given his opinion, but Dr. Shen, do you have any opinion?
No, I pretty much agree because but the convention is that there is a tendency to, as Dr. Notringen has mentioned, the burden of safety on the worker. There's a very good phrase. I think I will love to use it. Yeah,
Right.
that that keep on happening, and then instead of going to the organization of work, supervision, quality of arrangements. I mean overall work organization as we call it. Lands up to the lap of the worker, the poor fellow at the front. So I think we need to have a lot of, I think this itself it will be a session of one symposium.
Right.
Because there is a huge, I mean, a lot of things has to done to bring that, that open up that, bring the clarity in mind. And I think that would be a very good topic to discuss and get the line managers, more and more line managers in the discussion. I think we look forward to that maybe once everybody is able to come on board once again. So thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be the end of this panel discussion. Now I would like to request Dr. Sen to conclude this symposium formally.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are making me live or what? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I'm on live. Yes.
Okay. So now coming to this, Rosa, you are also there. She is joining through mobile. We are very sorry that we could not have her in this discussion. Maybe then the problem which you encountered will not be there. I must, since we are already pretty much in the time, so I would like to thank the organizing units like ICOH Scientific Committee in the construction industry, or Dr. Notringen has been the past chair for several years, and I had been the secretary. So I thank once again to the scientific committee for organizing this. I also thank the ASSP India chapter for supporting this, and of course to my organization LMP for providing the logistics and all the support which I require for this conference. My sincere thanks goes to Claudina, the Vice President, ICO Vice President in charge for scientific committees. My sincere thanks to Dr. Notringen for being available to us anytime we required his help, and be always supportive to the scientific endeavors we made. So really, thank you so much, sir, for coming and giving your time and guidance. I am sorry for the fiasco in the PPT. I think the initial was shared with Murli, and then in between the final one was with me, but not shared with him. So sorry for that. My thanks to dear Sati Rajendran. We first time met in Chennai, and I think that was a great interaction, and he had been very kind to be always forthcoming for any technical assistance, and I have already requested him for some long-term program, some certification, etc. I think for that CPWR also will request to be associated. So thank you very much, Dr. Sati Rajendran, for your early morning, both of you, sir, that you have very early morning, you have given us time. My colleague and a long-time friend, more than 2 decades, nearly 3 decades now, Dr. Somnath Gangopadhyay from Calcutta University, who is the head of ergonomics laboratory as well. Thank you very much, sir, for having Professor Rosa, Dr. Rosa, who is now on the call. We could not, properly get her in this conversation, but she has kept on sending me the responses, and I could put some of those here. And I hope in next time when we have a conference, we will have her presence in a more effective manner. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank 2 of my very trusted colleagues, Mr. Vinod and Murli, who had been in the background for last few days working with our IT team, our admin, to make this happen. So, and they have always been very supportive. So I thank them. I also thank all the participants across the organizations, various parts of the world, for joining in a very different times. Like in India, it is almost 10:50 p.m. and I think various parts of the country they have joined, and so I appreciate their participation, because without that the event is not successful. So I thank all of you. I would be requesting a feedback because for improvement of the session, feedback is important. So requesting feedbacks from all the participants, and we look forward if whether it is possible. I will discuss with ICOH for the people who are sending feedback, whether we can issue a certificate for participation as well. So with this, I once again profusely thank all of you, all the participants, all the speakers, guests, for coming and making this event successful. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you all. Thank you.